this tutorial is going to show you how to make what I hope is a really, really easy game for you to make so you can have fun. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that we're in the same screen view so we can see the same thing. So if you go up here to the top right and click on Layout, you can choose Wide. And that will give you this basic layout. And then the only change that I have from this layout is I don't like this view, so I'm going to click right here on these three lines, and I'm going to choose one column. So this is my easy way to see, and you can develop your own easy ways to see, but this is what we're seeing here. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and add a cube. So if we go over into the hierarchy menu, and the hierarchy menu is where we see the things that are in the scene that we're looking at. So right now we're in an untitled scene in a project called Simpler Running Game. So I'm going to go here in the hierarchy, and I'm going to add a 3D object and a cube, which is a cube, 3D cube. And there it is. And over here in the inspector, I can change the name of this cube to platform, because that's what we're going to make it. And I'm going to click enter so that that sticks. And you can see over here now it's now called platform. And for the position, I'm going to make it 0049.5. This is pre-planned. And I'm going to give it a Z of 100. And so a long cube. And then for the scale of the cube, I'm also, besides giving it 100, I'm going to give it an X of 3. That makes it 3 units wide. And I'm going to give it a Y, because I think that's a really thick platform. I'm going to give it a Y of 0.8. No, is it 0.8? No, I'm going to say 0.3. I like that. That's nice for me. So another thing we're going to do, no, that's not, we're just going to do that. That's what we did. And now we're going to add another thing, and this is going to also be called a cube, and this is going to be our player. So I'm going to click Create, 3D Object, Cube. And this one came in right here at 0, 0, 0. But we're going to change this, and we're going to make it 0.8 of Y, 0.8, and that's just going to bring it up. And I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it player, and I'm going to press enter. So now I have a player cube. Over here in the project panel, I'm going to do something called creating a material, and this material I'm going to drop onto the cube. So if I say create, and I choose material, this is the most basics of materials. I'm going to call this material player material. So if I ever want to change it, I can change it. So I pressed enter for that. So that's player material. You can see it over here. I'm going to click this box, and I'm going to make it like an easy blue. Okay? So I can just close this, and I can click on player material, and I can drag it onto the player. Okay? Oops, and drop it. I'm going to drag it and drop it. Come on, stay. Okay, it's dropped. Okay, now the player has this blue material. So if we look at player, we can see that the material is now blue. Okay, great. So I added the player. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the camera to a player. So right now in the game, up here we're in scene view, but you can click on game here, and it's going to take you into game view. And this is what the camera sees. That's this main camera. So if we click on main camera, we'll also see what the main camera sees. So that's the main camera view, and that's not the view that I want for my game. What I want actually is I want to have the camera like just right up behind my player. So I'm going to just go back to scene view, because this is the way I usually do it. And I've got main camera selected, and you can see when you select camera, even in scene view, you get this little camera preview over here. And I'm going to make the camera 0, 2, and -2. Oh, that's not, oh yeah, and then rotation of X of 30. So this gives me the view that I want to see for my player. But now we're going to be giving our player movement in a little bit, and when we do that, we want the camera to follow the player. And there's a really handy way to do this so you don't have to write script for the camera, and that's you click on the camera, you hold down, and then you slide, and you drop the camera onto the player. This makes the camera a child of the player. So now those two travel together. So you can close that, and we can't see the camera, but this is what the camera is going to see. And when the player moves, the camera is going to move with the player. All right, so we got the player. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a controller for our player. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an empty. So we're going to say create empty. And this empty was deposited just right here. And actually, the position that I want for this is 0.80, just to make sure it's in the same place as the player. It's very important that these two are in the same position, otherwise things get really confusing later. So right now the empty is called game object, but we want to rename it to player controller. Enter. Okay, and then for this player controller, we actually want to add something called a character controller. So over in the inspector, we can click add component. And last time I was looking for a box collider, but let's see, controller. No, how am I going to find this? Oh, it's not called a player controller. It's called a character controller. So character controller, click that. Now we have a character controller on our player, but you can see that the character controller is skinnier than our player, and we want it to take up the space of our player. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the radius to 0.8, and that just made it wider. Okay, so that should work. I feel like, no, that's too big. I'm going to make it a 0.6. Because you don't want it bigger than the player, otherwise the player is going to hit things beyond itself. Okay, so anyway, so there you go. And then we are going to just attach, because right now these are two separate game objects. What we're going to do is click on player and drag and drop it into the player controller. So now the player controller is this whole entity with a camera and a cube has material and the character controller. Okay, we also need to give the player controller a script. So now we're going to do scripting, and we're not actually going to write the script. I've pre-written it, and you're just going to copy paste. So there's the Google Doc with the script for you to copy and paste. So in the project panel, we click Create C# Script. And we're going to call this Character Movement Script. Character Movement Script. No spaces, and this is called camel case linking, where the first letter of each word is capitalized, like a camel. There you go, Character Movement Script. So now we're going to open Character Movement Script. And we're going to highlight all of this text, and we're going to press Control V, and that's going to drop the text in that I had on my clipboard and which you can find in the Google Doc. So up at the top, you're giving the libraries or the language to the, not the language, but the libraries, the vocabulary basically to the engine. So later on, we're going to even add other libraries to the script. And then you can see here it's automatically created the name Character Movement Script as we named it before. We have a private integer called lane, and this is for character movement. So the lane integer is going to keep our player locked into lanes. The move speed is a public float, so we can edit it outside of this. I'll show you that in a second. It's called move speed, and the default speed is set to 0.3, but we can change that. And then at the start of the game, the lane is going to equal 0, which means x is going to be, the cube is going to be in 0. So the three possible values of x for the player are x of -1, x of 0, and x of +1. So there you go. So then this transform translate vector 3 means x, y, z position changing, forward, and move speed. And what this does is it makes the player move forward steadily at the speed defined by move speed. So if we change this to 10, it will go really fast. And then here we say if input, get key down, key code left arrow. So that means if our users press the left arrow key. Then if the lane is less than -1, or sorry, greater than -1, lane is minus. So of course, if the lane were already at -1, you wouldn't want to take away lanes because then you'd go off. You don't want to go down to -2 or -3 because our platform is only from -1 to +1. So then the left arrow will only move to the left until the player gets to -1. And then we have the same code for plus, that the right arrow will only move to the right until the player gets to +1. So it's not going to take it over to 2. But you could change these numbers if you wanted a wider platform. And then this is just telling it about how to get into that position. So there you go, there's that. So then we're going to press Command S, and that's going to save our script. So this script editing is taking place in something called MonoDevelop. And I'm just going to go down to my dock that you can't see, and I'm going to click back on Unity, and I'm going to go back into Unity. So now we're in Unity. So we've written this character movement script, and now we need to attach the movement script to the player controller. So I'm going to click on player controller, and I'm going to click on the script and drag it in as a new component. Okay, so now you can see that public float of move speed is at 0.3, so we can edit that here if we want to as well. Okay, all right, I'm going to pause the video there because my computer's overheating. Power of Unity, and I'll see you in the next video.